The endless expanse of the cosmos held many terrors, but few rivaled the Ctheran swarm. Spanning dozens of systems, the biomechanical hive had become an existential nightmare for every sentient race it encountered. No negotiations, no respite, just the relentless surge of claws, fangs, and spiked carapaces tearing apart anything in their path. The swarm was not an army, it was a force of nature. In the shadow of this nightmare, the Galactic Accord stood as the last bastion of hope. A tenuous alliance of civilizations, their fleets gathered in orbit above the gas giant Selner IV, a world now reduced to a barren wasteland after the Ctheran consumed its moons. From the glimmering dreadnoughts of the Trevally Imperium to the agile strike cruisers of the Avlathi conglomerate, the most advanced war machines of the galaxy hovered in fragile unity. Admiral Rythek of the Trevally, a towering figure encased in polished exoskeletal armor, surveyed the assembled forces from the Bridge of Eternal Vow, his species' flagship. His mandibles clicked rhythmically as he analyzed the tactical overlays projected on the shimmering holoscreen. The numbers were grim. "We hold this line," he said, his voice resonant and commanding. "This system cannot fall. The swarm cannot be allowed to breach the inner spiral." The other commanders, representatives of over 20 species, nodded in solemn agreement. But even they knew the truth. Their combined fleets were not enough. The Ctheran consumed without pause, adapting to every weapon, every strategy. The battle ahead wasn't just unwinnable, it was suicidal. The tension thickened as the first wave of the swarm's bioships emerged from the edges of the system. Dark, organic masses, each bristling with weaponry that pulsated and glowed like festering wounds. There were thousands of them, more arriving with every passing moment. And then, something unexpected happened. A single distortion rippled through space-time near the outer edge of the battlefield. It was faint at first, barely registering on the fleet's sensors. But within moments it grew, a shimmering, violent tear in the void. Alarm klaxons blared aboard every ship as data flooded the networks, identifying the anomaly as a massive hyperspace exit. Whatever was coming through, it wasn't small. "What in the stars is that?" muttered Commander Vashtal of the Avlathi, her sleek figure wrapped in a shimmering holographic combat suit. Admiral Rythek squinted at the readings. "No identification. Not Ctheran. Not one of ours. Brace yourselves." The distortion burst open and a vessel emerged, if one could even call it that. It was massive, easily dwarfing the largest ships of the Accord. Its hull gleamed in obsidian black, interrupted only by faint blue lines glowing like veins of molten energy. The ship's angular design was entirely alien, and yet it radiated a terrifying familiarity. The vessel's presence was a deafening statement of power. Space itself seemed to tremble around it. For a moment even the swarm hesitated, their endless advance pausing as if some primal instinct told them to stop. A voice cut across the comm channels, clear, deep, and unmistakably human. "This is the UNS Indomitable. Human warship, designation, Aegis-class dreadnought. We are entering the engagement. Advise all Allied vessels to maintain minimum distance of 10,000 kilometers from our position. Acknowledge." The Bridge of the Eternal Vow fell silent. Rythek's mandibles twitched. "Humans? Impossible. They're myths." The Avlathi commander frowned. "Not myths. Extinct. The humans vanished centuries ago after their great war." Yet there it was. A ship bearing the markings of the long-lost Terran Union. Humanity, the species whispered about in galactic folklore, described as reckless, brutal, and unmatched in war, was supposed to be gone. Their systems had been dead zones for over 200 years, their colonies reduced to lifeless ruins. But now, the ghost of their legacy had arrived, and it radiated menace. The Ctheran swarm surged again, as if deciding that even this anomaly would not halt their hunger. Thousands of bioships accelerated toward the human warship, forming a tide of organic weaponry. Tendrils of energy arced from their spines, preparing to unleash destruction. The UNS Indomitable didn't flinch. It moved with eerie precision, its engines a silent hum. The first wave of the swarm reached it, and the dreadnought unleashed its fury. Beams of pure, concentrated energy erupted from its hull, slicing through the bioships like they were paper. Each shot was accompanied by a ripple of space-time, as though reality itself recoiled from the violence. Missiles the size of small cruisers erupted from hidden bays, their trajectories unpredictable and chaotic, weaving through enemy fire before detonating with the force of miniature supernovas. Entire sections of the swarm evaporated, their organic remains scattering like ash in the void. The assembled fleets of the Accord watched in stunned silence. No ship in their arsenal could output that much firepower, No weapon they possessed could match the destructive efficiency on display. Within minutes, the swarm's advance faltered. This isn't possible, Vashtal whispered. Admiral Rythek's voice was a mix of awe and terror. That's not a ship. It's a planet killer. As the Indomitable carved a path through the swarm, its comms opened again. This time the voice was colder. To all Accord vessels, this is Captain Elias Vren of the UNS Indomitable. Do not engage unless instructed. Humanity's war doctrine is now in effect. Observe and adapt. Rythek's mandibles clicked in frustration. Observe? Who do these relics think they are, ordering us around? But before he could protest further, the swarm adapted. A new wave emerged, larger, deadlier. Massive bioships, their carapaces reinforced with glowing armor plates, charged toward the Indomitable. The Accord fleets prepared to intervene, but the human dreadnought was already moving. Tracking enemy adaptations, came Captain Vren's voice. Initiating response protocol. Mark target zones. From the Indomitable's hull, dozens of drones launched, each moving with surgical precision. They deployed energy fields that warped space itself, trapping the swarm's larger vessels in pockets of distorted reality. Then, with grim efficiency, the dreadnought fired its main cannon, a weapon so powerful it tore through the largest bioships in a single shot. The battle turned into a slaughter. But as the swarm reeled, the Allied commanders realized something chilling. The humans weren't just fighting to win, they were fighting to annihilate. Every action was calculated to ensure no enemy would survive. It was warfare stripped of mercy, a cold and mechanical pursuit of total dominance. And for the first time, the galaxy saw what humanity truly was, a species forged in conflict, unmatched in destruction, and utterly unrelenting. As the last of the swarm's wave retreated into the void, Admiral Rythek finally broke the silence. Humanity isn't extinct, he said, his voice trembling. They were waiting. From the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Vren watched the carnage with an expressionless face. His officers remained silent, their movements precise and disciplined. The galaxy had changed in their absence, but war was a constant. Status report, Vren said, his voice devoid of emotion. Minimal damage sustained. Swarm retreat detected. Awaiting further enemy waves. Vren nodded. Good. The galaxy wanted a savior. It got us instead. As the dreadnought powered down its primary weapons and drifted into formation with the Accord fleet, one thing was clear to all who bore witness. The galaxy would never forget the day a human warship entered the fight. The aftermath of the UNS Indomitable's arrival lingered like a phantom in the minds of the Accord commanders. Every species present, some ancient, some young, had built their fleets to fight with precision and purpose, balancing military might with an understanding of their enemy. But what they had witnessed was something else entirely. The Indomitable had turned war into an artless equation. Obliteration was the only solution. Admiral Rythek stood frozen at his station aboard the Eternal Vow, his segmented limbs twitching as he replayed the battle data. Every maneuver, every strike, every coldly efficient kill spoke of a species that understood war at a depth no one else could fathom. This is what they became? Vashtal of the Avlathi muttered, her voice breaking the silence. How does a species disappear for centuries and return as this? Rythek snapped his mandibles, turning to his communications officer. Establish direct contact with the Indomitable. Now. A flurry of clicks and beeps echoed through the bridge as the comms officer attempted to connect, their elongated digits gliding over holographic controls. Finally, the human captain's voice answered, cutting through the tension like a blade. This is Captain Elias Vren of the UNS Indomitable. Speak. Rythek bristled at the tone. Humans, it seemed, had not grown more polite during their long absence. Captain Vren, this is Admiral Rythek of the Trevally. On behalf of the Galactic Accord, I must ask, why are you here? What do you want? And how in the stars did you survive? There was a pause, the faint hum of the human ship's systems filling the void. Then Vren's voice returned, calm and unwavering. Survival is our nature, Admiral. We endured because we had to. As for why we're here? He paused as if weighing his words carefully. We heard your distress signal. Humanity may have left the stage, but we were always listening. When the time came, we acted. Rythek clenched his clawed hands, frustration mounting. You're saying your species has been hiding for centuries, watching the galaxy burn while doing nothing? And now you simply decide to reappear, acting as though you're saviors? If we wanted to be saviors, Admiral, Vren replied coldly, you'd have invited us sooner. Before Rythek could respond, the holographic map on the bridge updated, displaying a new wave of Ctheran swarm forces emerging from hyperspace. This one was larger, more coordinated. The swarm had learned from the previous engagement. Priority warning, the tactical officer shouted. New bioforms detected, 2 supercarriers class unknown. Energy output suggests weapon systems more advanced than previous waves. Rythek turned back to the holoscreen, his frustration replaced by grim determination. Alert all ships. Prepare to intercept. But before he could issue further orders, the Indomitable spoke again, this time over an open channel. To all Accord vessels, Captain Vren said, engage defensive formations and hold position. We will handle the initial assault. The command was met with disbelief across the fleet. Vashtel's holographic avatar flickered as her frustration boiled over. Handle it? By yourselves? This isn't some rogue skirmish. That wave is designed to dismantle entire fleets. But the Indomitable was already moving. The human dreadnought accelerated toward the incoming swarm, its engines propelling it with a grace that belied its size. Unlike the scattered formations of the Accord fleets, the Indomitable faced the enemy alone, unflinching. The swarm's supercarriers, grotesque amalgamations of organic and mechanical components, loomed over the battlefield. Each one dwarfed the Indomitable in size, their surfaces bristling with pulsating growths that crackled with bioelectric energy. Waves of smaller bioships poured from their open maws, swarming toward the human warship like angry hornets. Target locked, came Vren's voice, audible even across the Accord frequencies. Deploying auxiliary systems. The Indomitable transformed. Panels along its obsidian hull slid open, revealing arrays of glowing turrets and launch bays. From its sides, hundreds of autonomous combat drones emerged, forming an intricate lattice of coordinated firepower. These drones moved with frightening precision, intercepting the incoming bioships before they could even get close. Then the Indomitable fired its main cannon. The weapon, which had already impressed the Accord fleets in the previous engagement, now revealed its full potential. A single beam of energy erupted from the ship's core, its intensity so blinding that it momentarily overloaded the sensors of nearby vessels. The beam tore through the swarm's first supercarrier, splitting it in half. The explosion that followed was apocalyptic, fragments of the organic ship disintegrating into clouds of fiery debris. The second supercarrier retaliated. Its spiked tendrils lashed out, firing concentrated plasma bolts that warped space around them. The Indomitable evaded with precision, its drones forming a shield around it, absorbing the brunt of the attack. Within moments, the human warship launched a counterstrike. A series of projectiles erupted from its missile bays, dark, jagged constructs that seemed to shimmer as they moved. Each missile bypassed the supercarrier's defenses, embedding itself deep within its organic hull. A second later, the warheads detonated, unleashing a chain reaction that consumed the massive bioship from the inside out. The swarm's remaining forces hesitated, their hive instincts faltering in the face of such overwhelming destruction. Rythek stared at the holoscreen, his disbelief turning to awe. One ship, he muttered. One ship did this. But Vashtel, ever cautious, voiced what everyone was thinking. Why? Why now? The humans didn't come to save us, they came to remind us of something. As the battlefield quieted, the Indomitable transmitted another message. This is Captain Vren. The swarm's adaptations are escalating. Your ships will not survive the next wave without support. Prepare your fleets for coordinated maneuvers. Rythek couldn't suppress a bitter laugh. Coordinated? They're treating us like subordinates? But he also knew Vren was right. The swarm wasn't done, and neither was the Indomitable. As the fleet repositioned, Vashtel's voice dropped to a whisper, audible only to Rythek. What happens when the swarm is gone, Admiral? What happens when there's nothing left for the humans to fight? Rythek didn't answer. He couldn't. But deep down he understood the implications. The Indomitable wasn't just a warship. It was a message. Humanity had returned. And the galaxy would never be the same. The calm after the obliteration of the swarm's wave was an illusion. Every commander in the Accord fleet could feel it in their bones, or the equivalent depending on their biology. The swarm was never truly defeated. They adapted. They always adapted. And this time it would be no different. Admiral Rythek's eyes remained fixed on the tactical display, his clawed hands clenching the railing in front of him. The battlefield, for all its vastness, felt claustrophobic under the shadow of uncertainty. The human warship, Indomitable, hovered at the edge of the formation like a silent predator, its black hull in ominous contrast to the gleaming ships of the Accord. "They'll come again," Rythek muttered to himself, loud enough for Vashtal to hear. "Of course they will," she replied from her holographic projection, her voice sharp. "But the question is, will the humans?" Before either could speculate further, the fleet's long-range sensors began to scream. A pulse rippled across the void, subtle but distinct. It wasn't a hyperspace signature, not exactly, it was something new. Something the swarm hadn't done before. "Admiral," the tactical officer shouted. "Multiple incoming signatures, no thousands. But they're merging? Merging?" Rythek turned toward the holoscreen, his mandibles clicking in confusion. The display updated, showing a swirling mass of energy and matter coalescing into something incomprehensible. At the far edge of the system, the swarm revealed its newest horror. What emerged wasn't a fleet, nor a wave of bioships. It was a single entity, a monstrous amalgamation of the swarm's technology and biology. A living warship, kilometers long, its surface pulsating like a diseased heart. Spiked tendrils extended in every direction, crackling with energy that destabilized the space around it. The Eternal Vow sensors struggled to quantify the entity. Energy readings spiked off the charts, and the ship's AI issued warnings that no known weapon in the Accord arsenal could penetrate the creature's dense carapace. "This is new," Vashtal said, her holographic form flickering as the Eternal Vow-S system struggled to process the readings. "The swarms never merged before. They're evolving faster than ever." Rythek's mind raced. Every strategy, every contingency plan the Accord had prepared for the swarm, crumbled in the face of this monstrosity. "Get me Captain Vren," he barked. The human's voice cut through the comms as cold as ever. "Admiral, we see it." "What is that thing?" Rythek demanded, his composure fraying. "And more importantly, can you destroy it?" There was a pause. Then Vren's voice returned, calm and clinical. "It's a hive core construct. The Swarm Queen. We've encountered something similar before, during humanity's early wars. This one is significantly more advanced. Is it killable?" Vashtal interjected, her holographic form leaning forward, almost as though she could reach through the comms and shake the human. "Yes," Vren replied. "But not easily. This is the swarm's adaptation. They've consolidated their intelligence and resources into a single, mobile fortress. It's likely capable of coordinating their entire fleet in real time while functioning as an apex predator. We'll need more than brute force to take it down." "More than brute force?" Rythek hissed, his frustration boiling over. "That's all you've shown so far." On the display, the hive core construct began to move. Its massive tendrils unfurled and smaller bioships poured from its surface, forming a protective swarm around it. The creature's sheer size made the Indomitable look almost insignificant in comparison. "New orders," Vren said, ignoring Rythek's outburst. "All Accord vessels are to maintain defensive positions and provide suppressive fire against the construct's escort fleet. The Indomitable will engage the core directly." "You're insane," Vashtal snapped. "Even you can't take on something that size alone." "We won't be alone," Vren replied. "But we'll need time. Follow the orders or this battle is lost." Rythek wanted to argue, but there was no time. The hive core construct unleashed its first attack. A beam of pure, concentrated energy erupted from the creature's maw, its trajectory carving a path through the void. One of the Accord's capital ships, a Trevally battlecruiser, was caught in the blast, its shields collapsing in an instant. The ship detonated in a fiery explosion, taking 3 smaller frigates with it. The Indomitable responded immediately. Its drones formed a defensive grid, intercepting the next wave of energy blasts with pinpoint precision. The human warship surged forward, its main cannon charging for another devastating strike. "Deploying secondary systems," Vren announced. From the Indomitable, a series of smaller craft launched, sleek, angular vessels that moved with the same terrifying precision as the drones. They darted toward the hive core, each one releasing clouds of shimmering particles. "What are they doing?" Vashtal asked, her holographic eyes narrowing. "Nanite disruption fields," Vren replied. "Designed to destabilize the hive core's adaptive systems. It won't stop them, but it'll slow them down long enough for us to punch through." The Indomitable's cannon fired, the beam striking one of the hive core's tendrils. The impact sent a shockwave rippling through the void, severing the massive appendage. But the hive core retaliated instantly, unleashing a swarm of spiked projectiles that tore through the human ship's drone grid. The Indomitable absorbed the brunt of the attack, its shields flaring as they strained under the assault. The ship's hull shimmered, revealing layers of reinforced plating beneath its obsidian surface. "Shields at 70%, one of Vren's officers reported. "Hold course," Vren replied. The Hive Corps' smaller escorts swarmed toward the Accord fleet, forcing Rythek and Vashtal to focus their efforts on holding the line. The Accord ships fought valiantly, their weapons tearing through waves of bioships, but the cost was high. For every enemy destroyed, another took its place. Meanwhile, the Indomitable closed the distance to the Hive Corps. Its secondary weapon systems came online, unleashing a barrage of plasma and kinetic projectiles that tore into the creature's carapace. The Hive Corps shrieked, a sound that resonated across every comm channel, sending chills through the fleets. "They're drawing its focus," Vashtal said, her voice tinged with awe and dread. "They're using themselves as bait?" "Madness," Rythek muttered. "Absolute madness." But as the Indomitable pressed its attack, Rythek couldn't deny the truth. The humans weren't just fighting to win. They were fighting as if they had nothing left to lose. And perhaps that was their greatest weapon. The Hive Corps reared back, its remaining tendrils coiling as it prepared a massive counterattack. The energy readings spiked to levels the Accord sensors couldn't fully comprehend. "Brace for impact," Vren's voice warned. And then the galaxy held its breath. The Hive Corps' counterattack was cataclysmic. A pulsating orb of energy formed at the apex of its central maw, growing larger with each passing moment. The energy it radiated was unlike anything the Accord fleets had encountered before. This wasn't just a weapon, it was an extinction event waiting to be unleashed. Energy readings are spiking past any calculable threshold. Rythek's tactical officer shouted. "If that thing fires, it'll annihilate everything within 100,000 kilometers. "Captain Vren," Vashtal's voice came through the comms, layered with desperation. "Do something, asterisk." But the Indomitable was already in motion. The human warship powered forward, its engines burning with such intensity that its heat signature momentarily blinded the sensors of nearby ships. The remaining drones formed a tight phalanx around it, shielding it from the relentless barrage of bioships still swarming the battlefield. "Prepare for full weapons deployment," Vren's voice came over the Accord comm channels, calm and unwavering despite the enormity of the situation. Rythek's mandibles clicked nervously. "What do you mean by full deployment?" There was a long pause before Vren replied, his tone colder than ever. "We didn't come here to survive, Admiral. We came here to win." The Indomitable was built for one purpose: to end wars like this. On board the Indomitable, systems began activating that had remained dormant for centuries. Energy surged through the ship's superstructure, feeding into its core. Panels slid away, revealing clusters of crystalline emitters that glowed with an unnatural light. Even the Accord's most advanced sensors couldn't fully understand what was happening, but one thing was clear: the Indomitable was about to do something no ship in the galaxy had ever attempted. "We're detecting a massive energy buildup from the human vessel," Vashtal's science officer cried out, her holographic form flickering. It's destabilizing its own core." Rythek turned toward her projection, his voice laced with disbelief. "They're going to destroy themselves?" "No," Vashtal whispered, her eyes wide with realization. "They're going to take the Hive Corps with them." The Indomitable launched its final assault. Its main cannon fired again, but this time it wasn't a single beam. Instead, a cascading surge of energy erupted, enveloping the battlefield in a blinding white light. The beam struck the Hive Corps dead center, boring deep into its mass. The Hive Corps screeched, its monstrous form writhing as the energy tore through its adaptive shielding and biological armor. For a moment, it seemed as though the construct might endure, its sheer size and complexity defying even the Indomitable's might. But then the human warship unleashed its ultimate weapon. From the core of the Indomitable, a sphere of light expanded outward, bright, pure, and all-consuming. It wasn't a simple explosion, it was something far more profound. The sphere destabilized space itself, folding and tearing at the edges of reality. The Hive Corps, caught at the epicenter, began to disintegrate. Its tendrils flailed wildly, its energy blasts firing in random directions as its intelligence fractured and collapsed. On the Eternal Vow, Rythek and his crew could only watch in stunned silence as the Hive Corps fell apart piece by piece. Its massive body crumbled into glowing fragments, which were then consumed by the expanding sphere of destruction. The smaller bioships that had formed its protective swarm simply vanished, their organic structures vaporized in an instant. And then the light was gone. In its place was silence. The battlefield, once a cacophony of explosions and death, was now eerily still. Rythek's claws trembled as he leaned over the holoscreen, his compound eyes scanning for any trace of the Indomitable. But the human warship was gone. All sensors reporting negative, the tactical officer said, his voice barely above a whisper. The Indomitable, it's been destroyed. The Accord fleets began to regroup, their ships forming tight formations as they scanned for any remaining threats. But there were none. The swarm's hive core was gone, and with it, the coordinated intelligence that had driven their relentless attacks. The smaller swarm forces scattered, their hive mind shattered beyond repair. They did it, Vashtal said, her voice heavy with disbelief. They actually did it? Rythek slumped back into his chair, his mind reeling. The humans had done what no one else in the galaxy could have imagined. They hadn't just defeated the swarm, they had annihilated it at the cost of their own lives. But even as the relief of victory began to settle over the Accord fleets, a darker thought lingered in Rythek's mind. Humanity hadn't just reappeared, they had returned as something unstoppable, something incomprehensible. And now they were gone again, leaving behind only questions and fear. Admiral, Vashtal said quietly, her holographic form flickering. What happens now? Rythek didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked out at the empty void where the Indomitable had made its final stand. Now, he said at last, his voice low. Now the galaxy remembers. It remembers what humans are capable of. And it will tremble for as long as we live. The silence stretched across the bridge, heavy and unbroken. Far away beyond the edges of known space, something stirred. The ripple of the Indomitable's final act would not go unnoticed. Somewhere in the dark, other forces were awakening, forces that had watched humanity's return with both dread and anticipation. The war was over, but the galaxy's story was far from finished. And as the Accord fleet prepared to leave the battlefield, the faint echo of a message flickered across their comms. A voice, distorted and distant, but unmistakably human. Humanity endures. And then there was nothing.